Good morning, I'm Kristen Welker. Vladimir Putin thought the Donbas would be the key to his ultimate victory. But on the battlefield, his plans are collapsing like a house of cards. From the destruction of Russia's so-called invincible T-90M tanks by Ukrainian counterattacks to soldiers disobeying orders, everything proves just how weak Russia's military power has become. In today's video, we will see how Putin's master plan is unraveling right before his eyes and how Ukraine is holding its ground in this unequal war. Things are rapidly falling apart for Vladimir Putin in the Donbas, and the situation is shifting in ways he never expected. What was supposed to be his defining victory has instead become the clearest example of how badly his plans are unraveling. And now, as Ukrainian forces strike back with surprising strength, Putin is watching the very foundation of his military strategy break apart in front of the entire world. For years, Putin insisted that the Donbas was the key to ending the war. He told negotiators that once Ukraine surrendered, the region, peace would follow. He claimed the Donbas was already collapsing, that its fall was inevitable. But the reality happening on the ground today tells a completely different story, one he cannot hide behind speeches or propaganda. We will not give the aggressor anything, and we will not forgive them anything. We clearly see that Russia is a long-term threat. So here in Europe, we need years-long cooperation and real results, both in the short term and in the longer term, so that people can live. And one more thing. I have instructed our diplomats and have already discussed this with many leaders to prepare a meeting of the coalition of the willing in the near future. We in Europe need strong, united positions, and it will happen. And the most frightening is that they started to close the borders. And it's so hard to stop. Across the front line, Russian troops are struggling to make meaningful advances. Ukrainian formations are holding, adapting, and pushing back with force. And this resistance is beginning to expose something Putin has tried desperately to conceal. Russia's military is weakening faster than it can recover. Just look at what's happening with Russia's armor. The world has now seen footage of a top-tier T-90M, the tank Putin called his invincible breakthrough weapon, taking repeated direct hits from a 25-millimeter Bushmaster cannon mounted on a Ukrainian Bradley 1FV. This wasn't supposed to happen. The T-90M is Russia's pride, a multi-million-dollar machine, and yet it was stopped by a vehicle decades older. Moments like this aren't isolated. They've become part of a larger pattern. Russian equipment underperforming, Russian units weakening, Russian tactics falling apart under pressure. And every time one of these failures is caught on camera, it becomes harder for Putin to convince people that he's winning. Anything at all. And in the middle of all this, a moment from the front line quietly exposes the truth about who really wants peace. Ukrainian soldier Moisey Bondarenko was filmed performing Radiohead's No Surprises on his violin, right there in the trenches. No speeches, no propaganda, just a soldier playing a gentle melody while explosions echoed in the distance. It's a reminder that Ukraine never asked for this bloody war. Even under fire, their troops still hold on to culture, humanity, and the hope that this ends with peace, not more destruction. Meanwhile, Russia continues pushing a war that Ukrainians never wanted in the first place. And as if that wasn't embarrassing enough for Vladimir Putin, even his own troops are increasingly ignoring orders. Independent reports show rising cases of soldiers turning against the system, with serious incidents happening inside Russia itself. Analysts say many fighters are acting out of frustration, guilt, or disillusionment after months on the front. The result is a growing loss of discipline that Moscow can't hide. Another sign that the war is backfiring at home just as much as abroad. Meanwhile, inside the Donbas itself, the story is even more damaging for Moscow. Putin claims the region is almost fully under Russian control, but Ukrainian strongholds still stand. Cities like Kramatorsk remain defiant despite constant bombardment. Russian forces have launched weeks of drone attacks, missile strikes, and glide bomb assaults, but none of these tactics have broken Ukrainian defensive lines. Instead, they've revealed how much Russia relies on long-range strikes because their ground troops can't push forward the way Putin demands. This is the part Russia hoped no one would notice if pushing into the Donbas was as easy as Putin claimed. The fighting wouldn't look like this. Ukraine's resistance has turned what was supposed to be a quick, symbolic victory into a costly and exhausting struggle. Russian commanders are stretched thin, their soldiers exhausted, and their armored vehicles showing vulnerabilities in battle after battle. Even Russian analysts, the ones who speak cautiously to avoid trouble, have started hinting that the campaign is more complex than initially expected. That's the closest they can get to saying what everyone else sees. Clearly, Russia is not in control of this situation. The Donbas was Putin's chosen battleground. He needed this region to prove that the invasion meant something. He needed a win big enough to silence critics, restore confidence, and justify years of casualties. But now the Donbas is becoming a symbol of something entirely different. The limits of Russian power and the strength of Ukrainian defense. And it's not just equipment problems or tactical failures. It's also the growing pressure inside Russia itself. The longer the war drags on, the more resources it consumes and the more citizens question what they are getting in return. While they cannot openly protest the war, they are already pushing back against the consequences of it. Rising taxes, economic strain, and declining trust. Putin may be able to silence criticism at home, but he cannot silence the battlefield. Hard numbers and real combat outcomes speak louder than any speech he delivers on television. Every Ukrainian counterstrike, every Russian retreat, every destroyed armored column sends the same message. Ukraine is not giving up the Donbas, and Russia is not capable of taking it the way Putin promised. And that's the core of the story here. The Donbas was supposed to be a demonstration of strength. Instead, it's revealing the weaknesses of an army that has already been fighting too long, losing too many vehicles, and struggling to maintain momentum. Even the Russian public, carefully shielded from frontline realities, is beginning to feel the effects of a war that refuses to end the way the Kremlin predicted. Ukraine, on the other hand, stands firm, despite bombings and blackouts, despite the pressure and the constant attacks. Ukraine continues to innovate, adapt, and resist. And every time Ukrainian forces stop a Russian advance or destroy another piece of cutting-edge Russian equipment, the narrative shifts further away from Putin's control. He wanted the Donbas to prove his power. Now the Donbas is proving something else entirely. It's showing the world that Russia's military isn't what it claimed to be. It's showing that Ukraine can outmaneuver, outfight, and outlast an invading force much larger than itself. And it's showing that Putin's grand plan, the one he built his reputation on, is slipping away faster than he can replace the losses. Putin wanted the Donbas, but instead of gaining it, he's losing his tanks, losing his military credibility, and losing the strategic advantage he once believed was guaranteed. And as Ukraine continues to hold strong, that gap between Putin's claims and Russia's actual capabilities grows wider every single day. And if that wasn't humiliating enough for little Vladimir, great invincible Russia now shows just how desperate it has become. After failing to crush Ukraine's military, even after years of full-scale war, it has turned its fury on civilians, bombing apartment blocks, schools, and hospitals, leaving families trapped under rubble. Meanwhile, Russian soldiers, worn down by the horrors they've committed, are abandoning the front lines, unable to obey orders, haunted by guilt over atrocities, both in Ukraine and back home. The once feared army now struggles to maintain discipline. Morale is collapsing, and even the most loyal units are breaking apart, exposing the hollow threat behind Putin's bluster. The world sees a military that cannot win on the battlefield, and a leader whose ambitions are unraveling before his eyes. Please subscribe.